Welcome back to Mind Your Business. We've got a new episode coming for you guys today. We're going to dive all the way into Web3. I'm joined back with Mark, but we're on different sides of the globe. What time is it for you, Mark?
It is now 7 a.m. in the sunny, dark morning in London.
You woke up just to speak to me?
I did, mate.
Look at that. I'm sitting here 6:30
Well, mate,
p.m.
you're famous.
Sunny summer.
You're famous. You're glamorous. What can I do? I have to fit in when I get a chance.
No, I got to fit into your schedule, Mark.
Good.
You're the one rolling around. Where's Mark this week? London? Where's he going to be next week?
Yeah, it's not that fun getting on a plane.
Mark, come on now. Okay, let's get straight.
It'd be fun doing the stuff
into
you
this.
do. If I could get on a plane to do a sandwich or some nice random gift, that's the way to do it. Sitting there and doing the stuff I have to do, nowhere near as much fun, Tom.
Mark, you're always invited.
Thank you.
Look, I am honestly super excited personally to talk about what we're going to talk about in this episode, and also for the audience, because when I think of Web3, it's a bit confusing in my head. I think of a lot of different things. Does Web3, is it even available for retail? These are all the questions in my head that I'm hoping we can talk through in this episode.
Well, I look forward to it too.
All right, I guess we'll start just from the top, and in a very simple kind of way, how would you describe Web3?
It's a whole lot of people who are trying to go back to the original idea of the internet, where you got to own your own content and control who you spoke to and who spoke to you. That's at the highest of the high level. The Web3 people hate the centralization, hate TikTok, Insta, all of these centralizing forces, and said, we want to go back to the original idea of each person has their own website, each person has their own network, each person controls their own stuff, rather than what we have now, which is if you're in your business, you're trying to feed the algorithm. And if you're in my world, you're basically having your brain taken hostage by the algorithm. Yeah.
So to describe it to the audience, Web 1 is pretty much just the internet, the creation of the internet.
And it had a whole lot of dreamers who had views about it being a democratized process, it providing freedom and things like that.
Yeah.
But as you remember, maybe you don't because you probably weren't alive, but at that stage, it had just the worst UX, right? Yeah. So it was clunky. It was really hard to do things. You couldn't scan files. You couldn't search. You couldn't do anything. It was really, the idea was great. The execution was absolutely terrible. And then Yahoo came along, and then Google came along, and then Facebook came along, and the user experience was fantastic. You got on Netscape and you got really, really excited. But the problem was the people who got you excited took your brain hostage.
Yeah, well, financially, I wish I could go back and be alive for that era. It was a lot of good gains from what I've seen on the charts.
Yep.
But so Web 1 was the internet, then Web 2 was kind of the creation of social medias and those kinds of platforms. And now Web 3, from my perspective, what I've looked it up and I've seen, it's more about peer-to-peer kind of decentralized, that we can send each other money. No one controls the money. I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, but this is just in my head.
That's right.
Yeah. And then the confusing part, which is going to be interesting to see if the mainstream and everyone kind of adapts to what Web3 is, how it's going to kind of be used. How do these ideas that they have about Web3 actually come to life, which I'm super intrigued about.
But also, what I urge people to do is recognize that you've got to decide what you're upset about in Web 2 before you can feel solidly on your feet about Web3. Getting scammed by terrible crypto whatevers, that's a terrible place to be. And personally, I think the promise of Bitcoin is wildly overrated as well. So what I try and bring people back to is some sort of recognition about how horrible the state of Web 2 is. That if you talk to authors like Jonathan Haidt about the increase in mental health problems as a consequence of what's going on at the moment, the analogy that I try and use is if you go and ever watch Mad Men, do you remember that 60s TV show?
I remember
everyone's, everyone's smoking 40 or 60 cigarettes a day, right? It's about the 60s. It was 10 years ago. Everybody in the 1950s and 60s smoked 40 or 60 cigarettes a day. And they're smoking in the office and they're all smoking. And you look at something like that and you say, everyone knew that cigarettes were bad for you and that here's everybody smoking. And what I say to people is go into a restaurant and look at how many people are looking at their phones. We know that that's a terrible thing for people. We know it hurts mental health. It hurts the social infrastructure as a society. It causes people to go extremes rather than find some way to work together. So why I'm focused on Web3, people say, why did you come back from retirement? It isn't because I think Web3 is necessarily magic. I just think the world, what we're doing to ourselves, letting these 7 companies control our brains, is such a terrible, terrible thing for society. We've got to come and do something else. That's why I'm trying to be in Web3. Now, I have a friend of mine who has exactly the same view about Web2, called Rebecca Giblin. She's a academic in the law faculty at Melbourne University. And she hates Web 2 every bit as much as I do. But she has a completely different solution. She says, we've got to find some way for, a world government to put some regulation in place to make Web 2 work better than it's doing. And all of the Web 3 promises are rubbish. So I know that sounds like a strange place to start this, but it depends on how much you care about and worry about where we are at the moment, how serious you are about actually thinking about trying to make Web3 work.
It is interesting because I feel like these big companies and governments are going to do the same with Web3 as they're treating crypto. They're super against it. It makes them lose money in the long term. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So do you think there's going to be a lot of pushback from governments and these big corporations like Facebook and stuff to actually start doing this?
So I know this is tangential for your listeners, but really, really important. There was a decision handed down by a jury in California last week where Fortnite, which is no small company on its own, took on Google and said, you are behaving anti-competitively when you don't let us get our viewers and the people who want to play our game, you don't let them actually buy Fortnite directly from us. You force anybody who's got a Google phone to buy it on the Google store, whatever the app store is.
Yeah.
And the jury said, that's completely anti-competitive. That's monopolistic. We're not going to let you do it. Now, there have been 5 or 6 antitrust cases in America and Europe trying to achieve the same thing and saying that Google's control and Apple's control of the app stores is a monopoly and is anti-competitive. But I have a lot of faith in individuals far more than governments. And the 12 people on the jury in California said, this is really, really bad. We're not going to let you do it. And so it's begun the dismantling of Web 2 and some sort of mechanism to allow you and your followers to have more freedom and not get captured. It's beginning. Now, a whole lot of people would legitimately say, well, Mark, that's Web 2 and normal society finding a way to deal with these problems rather than having to deal with, apes and pixels and all the rubbish that you deal with. But it's far more about a concern for people of your generation than it is necessarily that it has to be crypto. And this is a really good example of a judgment by a whole lot of, normal people to say what's going on at the moment is terrible and we want to stop it.
Yeah, well, it's hard because if Web3 is going to be successful and make this breakthrough, it is going to come through my generation and the generation coming through now to really get behind it, because I'm not trying to label older people in a kind of group, but they're going to be so not inclined to want to even touch Web3, let alone learn how an iPhone works. They're very traditionalist the way banks work and people holding their money like that. I personally am on the fence with Web3 about it getting approved because of that, because of how many people that are divided about, is it going to be practical? Is it actually going to work? At the end of the day, people want something that is so easy to use that they're going to just choose the best option. That's why everyone, in my opinion, still uses banks and watches Netflix, because they're the dominant ones. That's what everyone knows and everyone trusts.
But in fairness, Tom, you've had Netflix your whole life. Netflix came out of the clear blue sky in my life, right? You had all of the TV stations, all of the movie studios, and some guy sending DVDs by mail suddenly said, no, we're going to do this by download. That was an absolute revolution.
Yeah.
And I don't agree with you on banks. Stripe, which I think is a sort of Web 2.5 company, so half what spans old world and new world, it's 1% of global GDP runs on Stripe, and Stripe wasn't around 10 years ago, to give you some idea. So there's a lot more change going on. Yeah. And I think it's a fair comment for people to say, well, that's not really Web3, Mark. Watch Web2's readjusting. Companies like Shopify are another one that are going to do really, really good things if Google and Apple have to lose control. But then there's companies like Minecraft, again, owned by Microsoft, but what's going on inside there, or Roblox, where the digital economy works for a whole lot of kids.
Well,
kids are using Roblox money.
Yeah. You mentioned it as well with Fortnite. Fortnite is trying to do that significantly with their new update to their game. So now it's more than just a battle royale. There's 4 or 5 different game modes now that they've added that are completely different to what Fortnite was when it was created. Fortnite is becoming a new Roblox, is what they're trying to kind of do.
Yep.
Inside it.
Yeah, and everybody understands that you're going to own a whole lot of these digital assets. The issue is the Fortnite assets are going to stay within the Fortnite ecosystem. The Roblox assets stayed within the Roblox ecosystem. So for the part that people of my generation don't understand is the core of my thesis is attention leads to economy. Where people are actually spending their attention, eventually that's going to be the economy. So all these people can't understand that a digital asset feels real to people.
Yeah.
But people's assets inside Fortnite or inside Roblox or inside Minecraft, they are as connected to people's personal identity as their shoes or their clothes or their car.
And they hold real life value as well. There's rare skins that people sell. There's a good game that really took on the NFT approach before NFTs became a thing, was a game called Counter-Strike. So Counter-Strike is it's just a free-for-all kind of shooter game, similar to Call of Duty. But there were certain skins that you could unlock in the game, and they became worth a certain amount of money. And then there became this whole marketplace within the game where you could sell and trade your skins for guns. And that's pretty much just like an NFT.
Yeah, exactly. And the issue is that those are closed systems. So the description I try and come up with for people of my generation is it's like the idea that you had to buy a set of golf clubs at every golf club course you had to play on, right? So that is nowhere near as sensible an economy as being able to pick your golf clubs up and move from one golf course to another. But somehow the simple things, which is, well, one day I want to play a game that's controlled by Sony, and then that next day I want to play a game that's controlled by Microsoft, and the next game I want to play one that's just turned up on the internet, and I want to take all of my time, all of my relationships, all of those things and port them across. Now, it's not to say that there isn't a challenge, but the idea that somebody says, no, you've spent however long you are involved in Fortnite, and if when you leave, you've got to leave all that stuff behind, just seems to me to be not a sensible way to run an economy or a world.
Let's move on from this bit. Do you think that what you touched on about mental health and social media, I live and breathe that kind of every day. You kind of have a good day or a bad day, depending on if a video does good or bad. It's really bad, and it's something that like we could talk about in a later episode, like the actual psychology behind doing social media. But do you think
we should get Jonathan Haidt? This guy's written a book. He's a really, really good guy, right? And we'll get him on the episode to talk about it. Yeah,
that's definitely something
that
we should definitely talk about, because I would love to talk about that. Just to hand that down to upcoming creators or people interesting looking into creators, like the actual mindset behind it and how it goes. But let's get back on track. Do you think that Web3 kind of has the ability to worsen people's mental health if it's like to do with staying in a game longer, virtual reality is kind of part of Web3, those kind of aspects?
Well, I think it's two different parts, which is if augmented reality and virtual reality can't become mainstream, what that's going to do to the world, I can't be sure. I don't know what it feels like. I've never put on a pair of those goggles. I've never been around. I've seen some of the augmented reality stuff on your phone, but I've never really got hooked at it. So I don't know. What I do know is I mindlessly doom scroll and check my phone, 10 times as much a day as I need to. And that's bad. If once the goggles come, I'm even more addicted to those mini dopamine, cookies, that can only be bad too, compared to going and walking along the beach having left your phone behind.
I really like the new product Meta has come out with Ray-Ban, if you've heard of those. So they brought out these new glasses and they have a camera inside it so you can film video, but they're also AI controlled, where you can look at something and be like, hi, whatever your character name is there, like, hi, what am I looking at? And they'll explain in detail to you what you're looking at. Or like, oh, this is a certain dish from Indonesia, or this is what, like, it's insane.
Yeah.
But
I think, what I don't like at the moment is that, $4 or $5 trillion, which is five Australian stock markets, let's say, are the value of the companies that mean that you work for the wages you work for, creating all this content. The other issue, which is how do we find some way to control the dopamine cookies? I think we really do have to go back to Rebecca and say, yes, we have to think about regulation here, because it's clearly hurting educational outcomes, societal outcomes, and mental health outcomes. And I hope some amount of Web3 where people aren't locked into the algorithm and feeding the algorithm naturally improves it. But I certainly wouldn't want to make the claim that Web3 is necessarily going to be better than Web2 in that stuff.
And how do you feel about Australia and their kind of stance on Web3 and crypto just in general?
Well, I think they're not even thinking about it. They've got a whole series of questions, as we've talked about probably off the episode. Here's you, right? One of the foremost Australian creators, and you can earn 10 times as much getting an American visa and going, And I don't know whether there's 2 of you or 20 of you, but you are for the internet age what, Kylie, Jason, the Hemsworths were for movies. Yeah. And at the moment,
I'll take it.
At the moment, no one's bothering to think about how are we going to encourage your friends from Indonesia to come and make content in Australia and make a regional production studio for business like yours, rather than you confront the recognition, what you told me, which is, hey, I've got 10 times as many followers in America as I do here in Australia. But all the people say, if you want a sponsorship in America, you've got to go and live in America.
Yeah.
So makes a huge, huge problem. There's a whole lot of people who want to come and live in Australia, but the policy settings in Australia just completely ignore knowledge workers like you.
So you think that...
So I'm troubled.
You think Australia will just keep just putting it to the back with crypto and everything? Like, my favorite thing to do every single night is watch Channel 7 News, and every single time they do the finance part and they don't speak about crypto is another good day for me.
Yeah. Yes.
Because it's just... Like, I'm very heavily invested in crypto and I love like the fundamentals of it. And I just love how little Australia talks about crypto just in general.
Yeah.
But they have these insane regulations behind it.
Yeah.
It's just...
No, and I think it's going to be really, really disappointing. I don't think people understand the rebates that Disney gets for running and Warner's get for running movies and producing movies in Australia. And nobody is engaging on the issues of how we keep the creator talents like you, or create a viable creator economy in Australia. And you look at what the Koreans did with K-pop, and you can see that a proper investment in that area makes a big, big difference. And you can have a better society if you lean into it and lean into the future and get excited about it. But it's a great disappointment to me. I see nobody really engaging with that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've started to work on the side with CoinSpot, which is an Australian crypto platform. And we've been interviewing people in public just about general knowledge crypto, and I would say about 60 or 70% have either little to no idea about crypto or want nothing to do with it.
Mm.
And it's just like...
Exactly.
Oh my God, it's just like, not from like the investing side of things, but it's just like, oh my God, like there's so much more out there that you're like closing off.
Yeah. Well, I think it's deeply disappointing and I don't understand it. Now, as I've said consistently, we did an appalling job of getting with a whole lot of scammers and not doing a good job of explaining what our industry was about. So shame on us.
Yeah.
But with the Americans and the Chinese and everyone in Asia recognizing that it's not going away, the idea that you can sit in Australia and just put your head in the sand when half of the people come out of school wanting to be influencers like you, and that's effectively, Web3 is you.
The biggest thing that I see media talk about that doesn't like crypto, I have a good fun fact for you, is that everywhere on the news they'll talk about, everyone's using Bitcoin or cryptocurrency for illegal activities.
Yep.
I got a statistic for you. How much percentage of all crypto transactions do you think are for illegal activity?
I don't know.
Not even
1%?
Yeah, 1%.
Good.
And guess how many percentage of USD is spent on illegal activities? 4%.
Mm.
So
that is, amazing.
It's interesting because like my parents, if you mention crypto or like people that aren't educated, always lead with that fact or lead with, it's for illegal stuff.
But also what I try and explain to people, but my most sophisticated friends don't understand because they don't spend the time, is it's really bad for doing illegal stuff now.
Yeah.
It was fine back right at the beginning when nobody knew about it. But every single of the big agencies now understand that it's not about the coins, it's about the wallets. And you can paint the wallets that you're worried about.
Yeah.
And it's really, really bad for money laundering compared to the US dollar or gold. You just can't use it for that effectively. It's the same as everyone says that Hamas were using. It's like the Qataris sent $5 billion to Hamas totally legally. America sends $3 billion to Iran. Yeah.
Yeah.
And somewhere between $9 and $19 million got frozen, didn't even get to Hamas. And suddenly it's like Hamas got funded by crypto. It's like, no, Hamas got funded by Qatar, which is an airline that flies into Australia every single day. Like, some amount of reality, but people just want to use any excuse to shut it down for the reasons that you said at the beginning, which is it does threaten a whole lot of centralized power structures.
Yeah, it is interesting. I don't know, because I'm very open-minded. I don't really we spoke about this in an earlier episode with how Australian news is very filmed very negatively or highlights on the negatives of things more than the actual positives, and it falls straight into that. Just these banks, the governments, it's going to take away from them. So obviously they're going to talk bad on it. What the head of JP Morgan came out and said about Bitcoin, that he wants to burn it to the ground. But then if you go past the door, they're creating a crypto project themselves, or they're invested in Ethereum. It's like you're saying one thing, but you're doing the other.
But not only that, he's got fined $3 billion for all of his money laundering stuff. And he sat there and made his number one client, Jeffrey Epstein, right?
Yeah.
For 5 years, the guy's sitting there and doing all of that horrendous stuff. And he's the number one client at JP Morgan. They rolled out the red carpet.
But
the hypocrisy is just stunning of the incumbents, just unbelievable.
Yeah, but it's interesting because all these big money holders, BlackRock, Vanguard, are so into cryptocurrency right now, or from everything that's coming up. Everything is changing. It's like people are going to follow where the money goes or follow where the news is going, which...
Well, that's the point that you're making, which is, in America, they know it's coming, right? They can't leave an asset in that sort of, that big, that volatile and not do something about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'm excited for the next 2 years in cryptocurrency.
Well, it's going to be exciting for sure, mate, because that Google decision, right, that's a big, big deal for the world. It really is.
Yeah.
It's going to let you earn a lot more money and have a better life if it doesn't get overturned on appeal, and it doesn't look like it will. They've got,
Do you have a similar feeling with Web3 and how the .com bubble kind of went? Do you see it kind of going in the same kind of pattern, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, I think what I keep on saying to people is we need Tetris or Angry Birds. We need something where nobody has to talk about Web3, nobody has to talk about NFTs, nobody has to deal with anything else. Just look at this. This is cool. I want to play this. Yeah?
Yeah.
And suddenly it's just going to go vroom. Yeah? What that is, I don't know. But it's just going to be a cool thing.
I think the biggest thing that I can see that's going to happen in the very short term is online gambling with crypto is through the roof and it's just going to continue to grow. And I think that whole those projects and those kind of types of crypto projects, that will come up will kind of start, for my opinion, Web3.
Yep.
With the terms of the in-game currency.
Did you see that race course game?
The
race,
you could buy a horse and you could buy a virtual reality horse. You could train it up. You could buy certain features for it. Yeah, it kind of falls into that, but that's a really big industry within crypto that is growing significantly right now.
Yeah, and I think more of it for exactly that reason. There's going to be more of those different ways. The payment rails are better. You're going to be able to find more interesting games. What I've said to people is, if you go back to your gaming mentality, I think there's going to be, at some stage, a Web3 game, which is going to be very hard for Web2 to compete against, where you can pick up live players off a bench to play with you and pay them some amount to be on your team. So the description I have for people of my age is, if you want to play tennis in Bali and you're you and you want to play doubles, you can pay 3 guys, there to play with you for $1 an hour or something like that. Yeah. And nobody feels bad about doing that. It's like, hey, I needed some people to play tennis with. These 3 guys were there. They're pros at the tennis club. Yeah. That's going to happen in some sort of Web3 game where the guys in the emerging markets are earning really good money by their standards, and somebody gets to play a game they wouldn't be able to play otherwise. Yeah. Yeah. But it's not exploitation. It's not slave labor. It's nothing. It's just, here we got a team of people playing and some person's paying for the team. The richest people in the world do this in polo all the time and nobody feels bad about it.
Yeah, I definitely think that there is a lot of free space to be taken up in the gaming industry as well with Web3, because there's probably about 5 to 10 games that are really popular still on console and PC, but then there's so much room for new games to be made. Like Fortnite is like the main one I think about. There's Fortnite, there's what's the other one called? There's Fortnite, and there's a few Valorant, and there's only a select few games, but they're all very similar. They're all very narrowed down into a certain style of action game.
And what I don't understand, because I'm not a gamer, but I watched, Fortnite came from nowhere not that long ago. I mean, those guys, when they were creating their games, there was only 20 guys writing the code.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty. Who knows what?
I don't know who owns Fortnite, but I'm pretty sure the owners of Fortnite own a thing called Unreal Engine, and that is one of the. Oh, I'm so uneducated about this. Can't really talk on it, but it's kind of how the whole game is made and the software of how the game is made, and they make games for everyone else now, and they have this like cutting edge software game making system that is when you play Fortnite, it's the graphics are that good that it doesn't really make sense, and how big they can make it as well.
But also, I think the thing is, you got to look for a game that's much, much more cut down, that can get played in the emerging market. Yeah. Like, I know everybody hates what happened with Axie, but you're not going to have great graphics. This is going to be something that's able to take real people from all around the world. It's going to anticipate the fact that people have got broken down Wi-Fi. So you're never going to be able to compete against Tencent, Epic Games, Microsoft for the better and better stuff, the VR, but something that's much more rough, ready, and much more authentic. It's a bit the difference between Formula One and rally, You're going to get some people who really, really like the authenticity of rally driving as opposed to, Formula One. In Formula One, the big companies are going to win because they're just going to be able to outspend you.
Yeah, but a lot of these big companies are just moving into the crypto space. They're making NFTs. They're making, I won't be surprised if, if Epic Games make a Web3 project in the next coming year.
Yeah. But will it be honest, or will it sort of have a face and you can't really, that's the issue, which is it going to be Web 2 disguised as Web 3? Yep. Or is it going to be authentically a better economy? Because, I don't want to take you down a particular development economist rabbit hole, but the issue is you really are going to be so much better off if you own your own stuff. If the promise of Web 3, which is your follower base is yours and you can take them wherever, you're going to end up with a better life, a better set of economics, and so are those, that you don't have to feed the algorithm in order to feed your followers, which is the way it all works at the moment. If you can just say, have your followers follow you, and your website, and you're serving them what you want, rather than via YouTube and and TikTok. And
Yeah, but these algorithms, Mark, they hook you in. They're
I do.
they're so perfectly made, especially for you and your thumb. Like they know what makes you want to stop. And I'm not a slave to the algorithm, kind of am, but I wouldn't be where I am right. I wouldn't be speaking to you, Mark, if it wasn't for TikTok or if it wasn't for Instagram or having the ability to post on these
I
platforms.
don't agree with that, mate. I think certainly if there wasn't any internet, you wouldn't. You would have been sitting there trying to figure out how to go to Hollywood in a traditional
Yeah.
role, right? So yes, that part I get, which is if there wasn't 4 hours a day of people spend on the internet. But don't be thinking that the algorithm the algorithm was your reason for success. You're a highly creative guy. I'm relatively willing to, I'm pretty confident when they pack the scrum of creative content, you're going to come up with the football, whatever the algorithms are.
I'm on the
Yes,
side.
you
I'm
can
on the side of the scrum. I'm the flanker. I'm ready to take off.
Yeah, well, you certainly did. And I think that's your point about TikTok, which is, mate, I saw him pack the scrum there and I positioned myself well. And that's a big part of what worked for me. And I know how to play the algorithm.
Yeah.
But still, the fact that you would earn 10 times as much if you were in America as you earn in Australia, that's a bad thing for you. It's a bad thing for Australia. Yeah. And it's a bad thing for the 50% of kids who want to be you when they grow up.
Have you heard about what TikTok is looking to add to Australia in the next couple of months? So it's already in China and the US. It's called TikTok Shop. So it's pretty much just when you watch a video, there'll be a little like bar above the caption.
Yep.
And if I'm wearing a shirt that's in the video or I'm selling a product within the video, they click that link and it lands them straight on the product page of your website or whatever you're trying to sell.
So what are the splits?
That's a good question.
That it's 100.
I think they're taking about 40%, what I know off the top of my
see,
head.
that's the argument I make about web, which is Shopify and Stripe take 1 to 3% of that transaction, which feels fine to me. But this whole idea that the intermediary, that you and the manufacturer have to split 60% and TikTok gets 40% in that trade, that's terrible. So it's a 40% tax that we're paying to China, without any discussion. Like, as you say, back to how many Australians actually think about this, or anywhere else. It's like, okay, we're having all this big trade fight with China. There's 40% tax that China's going to take over the TikTok economy, and nobody even bothers to think about it.
And they're probably making, I don't even want to say a number of how much they're probably making already from it's super popular.
You don't want to even say it.
It's super popular in China and it's just emerging in the US. Like they just released it and it's doing numbers. So it's like,
I get it, mate.
Yeah.
That's why I want to know how many, what happens to those sandwich stores after you've given it a 9.8.
I don't know. Hopefully 1 or 2 people go and try their sandwiches. I'll be disappointed. I need to come up with a catchphrase or something where it's like, if you go to this restaurant, say Tom sent you or something, just so we can get a little bit of an indicator.
Well, I bet you what we should do is when I'm next in Sydney, we'll go and see 10 of the places and just say what's happened since Tom did his stuff.
Or we could create a little pop-up and we could just create it ourselves. We could see. It could be It could be a raging success, or it could just be me and you eating all the profits.
Well, no, I think there's all sorts of. Or we get 3 or 4 of the places to go and do a food jam.
Yeah.
Right. We get and say, okay, you've been in the awards. We'll go and get you to produce sandwiches somewhere.
I like these ideas. You know, Mark, I'm going to tell you a funny story again right now. So you chose to be on this podcast at 7 a.m. UK time, right?
Yep.
I chose to be on this podcast today instead of going to see a very famous actress movie premiere at Entertainment Quarter.
I'm really sorry to take you away from that.
Mark, I'd rather be here with you speaking about Web3. It's more, there's more depth in us speaking about this than me going and my eyes wandering. Anyways, let's get back to it.
Exactly. I think it's important stuff. What the Web3 economy is going to look like and who's going to get what is really important. And as we said, nobody in politics is bothering to spend any time thinking about it.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, it's all money laundering, and don't even bother to think about any of that. So they're really upset about those transactions, and they don't care about TikTok's 40%.
Yeah, it's I didn't actually realize that when I was telling you, but it is kind of interesting that they take such a huge percentage just because it's on their platform.
Yeah. And that's the fight. That's basically the fight that Fortnite had with Google, which is, you got to be kidding. These are our customers.
Yeah.
They can buy it directly from the website. You can't shut us down for selling it through a channel like that. And the jury said, yeah, it's rubbish. The same as the juries say, what are you talking about? Why does Tom and the T-shirt manufacturer have to pay you 40%? And when, Shopify is only charging 3 and Stripe's only charging 1.
Yeah. It's very interesting. You've opened my mind again to another door I wasn't thinking about. That's 40% more that I could use to, I don't know, make more T-shirts.
And when I take you through manufacturing costs and costs of your production, stuff like that, it's obscene, right?
Oh, I would end up with
absolutely
$1 profit.
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable.
Is there any Web3 projects that you're kind of looking at right now or that you're interested in?
I continue to want to buy a CryptoPunk.
Then why don't you?
Okay.
Isn't it a good price at the moment?
No, I missed the window. I was trying to be greedy. I missed the window. Then Ethereum zoomed. So now I wanted to be one of them who bought it in the teeth of the crypto winter.
Surely they've lost a bit of their value though now, haven't they? And it's about to go back up.
They bounced back, mate. And CryptoPunk costs $140,000 US.
It dipped though, didn't it, to below 100 or not?
Yeah, sure. They were down to 50 or 60.
Oh, Mark, what were you doing?
Mate, a thumbs up as well. It's been the story of my life.
Well, Ethereum's looking good as well because they just updated their whole system, or they're about to. Where it's
and Solana's roaring back. I was really skeptical about Solana.
Yeah,
I couldn't understand how the economics work and stuff. It's on fire. And then the guys in my crypto fund were buying a thing called Avalanche, which I don't even know what it does, but it's been right.
Mark, I like
you own Avalanche.
I love Avalanche. That's a good one. We had a good month.
Why? Okay, yeah, fantastic month, and my guys did too. So what does Avalanche do?
I'm going to.
You don't know either.
I'm going to be honest with you, Mark.
That's really bad, mate.
I'm going to be honest with you, Mark. I have 3 or 4 people I follow on TikTok about crypto.
Right. Yeah.
Non-financial advice. I take it as financial advice, and my portfolio is up a nice 40, 50% already.
Yeah, exactly. But I think somebody as smart as you, Thomas, you need to actually know what Avalanche does.
Is like a blockchain, and it's similar to Solana where it has a whole ecosystem that works underneath it. That's about...
Not enough, my son. I'm going to teach you about investing. And investing is not, oh, my 3 mates said jump into this.
Yeah, there is a lot of projects that I don't think are going to overtake Ethereum, but are kind of coming for it.
Yeah, no, Solana, Avalanche, and 2 or 3 of those others, especially with everyone thinking it's going to be the end of Binance. So you're going to have to find some other ways to use all of that traffic. So I thought FTX was going to refloat far quicker than it did. Yeah. It still hasn't at the moment. So, things with good UX and stuff.
You know why?
You're right.
You know why Binance got taken down?
No.
Because it's not US. It's not born and bred in the US. So what do you think the government wants all their money behind?
Yeah. No, I don't think that's
Coinbase,
completely
a nice
fair.
American one.
Yeah.
So I think
Yes.
the SEC or whatever went after Kraken and they went after Binance
Yeah.
because they weren't US. They couldn't regulate them.
Yeah. Well, I think to make your earlier point, which is you look at Vanguard and BlackRock and stuff like that, and JP Morgan, which is I hate crypto when crypto's run by the other guy.
Yeah.
I love crypto when it's run by JP Morgan and centralized, for sure. It's not going to be long before you have a JP Morgan Bitcoin ETF.
The time's ticking, Mark.
But
it's ticking.
It is ticking, mate. We need to get out there.
All right, Mark. Well, it was great to actually get in contact with you for this episode because we're on different places of the earth. But I think the audience got a good gauge more on Web3, hopefully.
Well, I hope so because I think so. And I think it's really, really important that they understand that if they want lives as influencers like you, they're going to have to find some way to engage in this and not just be ignoring it.
That was the mic drop moment from Mike we needed. We'll see you guys in the next episode.